So let me start with, obviously, with some of Margaret's lyrics. She says, "The spirit deep within is getting comfortable in my skin." How comfortable do you all feel? Apparently really well, you're comatose. So how comfortable you feel. She says, and she also says this, "Taking the surest road can lead to nowhere." How many of you have taken the easy road? Ever? Right? Oh, this looks easy. Yeah, it can lead to nowhere. Singing the same old song can leave you flat. And I love what she said, so take a look and take a look again. So I have a question for you this morning. And ask this to yourself personally, because I'm asking it to myself personally. What would it take for me to be comfortable in my skin with the idea I am God? What is it going to take for us to be comfortable with the conversation and the idea of I am God? Taking the idea of God and expanding it so that it's not so, that it doesn't seem so disrespectful to everything we've been brought up with our whole lives. Somebody said to me the other day how much they missed the God they grew up with coming into this teaching. And that can happen. Anybody have that? I'm sure most of you in this teaching have had a moment where you're like, I miss my personal, that God that I could say it's his fault. I miss the God that was responsible for everything in my life. If something didn't go the right way, God didn't want it to happen. And now it's like, no, you didn't equal it, so it didn't happen. So how do I get comfortable with this understanding? And when I talked to this person, when they asked me, what do you do? I said, I grew up Catholic. I had a very profound relationship with God. I was afraid of God. I was afraid of God the Father. God the Son I liked. God the Father was annoying. And God the Holy Ghost, I never understood what the hell that was. It was like Casper is part of this trio. So I didn't quite get it. But God the Father, I was afraid of. But my relationship wasn't with God the Father. My relationship was with God the Son, because that's how I saw myself, as God the Son. So, you come into a teaching like New Thought, metaphysics, and you start asking yourself, well, what is that? What was that relationship? And I've lost it. And right now I've been in mourning and in grief for 3 years now. And it's interesting because as you work through grief, you start to realize it's not going to end. It's just going to change. It's going to grow. It's going to expand. You're going to have better understanding. And then yesterday, something happens like Barbara leaves, and I'm caught again for a moment, just a moment, moments that crept up during the day. And it's like, what do I do with that relationship that has ended? Well, it hasn't ended. It hasn't ended at all. My relationship with my daughter hasn't ended. She's just not here to be a part of it physically. So my relationship with Jesus is still my relationship with Jesus, someone who left a long time ago. And now someone who left again when I got involved in other things other than religion. And so now I'm asking myself, what will it take me to get comfortable in my skin to keep all of these relationships going, but know that I am God? I am all of it. And I can go back to the teachings of Jesus and prove everything I believe in science of mind through the words that he supposedly said. I and the Father are one. Greater things will you do. It is done unto you as you believe. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. So much of what the teachings of Jesus come up to say prove for me religious science and prove this understanding. But that still doesn't involve me in the relationship that I seem to have lost, or I seemed to have lost, because I'm back on track with that relationship. So when I ask you, how comfortable can you be in this idea of I am God, is that too much to ask of myself? Too big a shift? For some people it is. For some people it really does seem disrespectful to what God is. And yet, I don't feel that way. And that's what I teach. I do teach the I am God paradigm. But one of the things I'm starting to realize is that who I was is not who I am. And who I am, this month is about knowing. Who I am is always who I was. I'll say it again, just in case you think I've lost my mind. Who I am is not who I was. And yet, who I am is always who I was. I just didn't know it. And I think a lot of us feel that way. So when I go to knowing I am God, that's not some ego trip. It's not some way I'm going to find myself liked more. No, it's actually coming to an understanding on a deeper level that I have more power than I ever imagined to create the life that I want. So, who would you have to be if you really got comfortable with who you are, your divine self? Who would you have to be in this world if you got really comfortable with knowing how powerful you are? The fifth question in the 5 questions is, do I know how great I am? Who would you have to become? Who would you have to show up as? What would happen in your life if you knew that you could only succeed because even your failures were success when you come down to it? So who would you have to become? Probably less stressful. Anybody want less stress in their life? Probably more healthy. Anyone want more health in their life? Yeah. Probably richer. Who'd like to be richer? Yeah, I mean like really rich. Like maybe the richest person on earth. Who said no? You don't want to be the richest person on earth? I do, because you know why? I'll give it away. Well, not all of it. Who would you have to be? Who would you have to live as if that were the truth? So the first quote I have for you today is by Eckhart Tolle. If you could give me that, Thor. To know yourself as the being underneath the thinker, the stillness underneath the mental noise, the love and joy underneath the pain, is freedom, salvation, enlightenment. To know yourself as that which is behind the thinker. You don't just think arbitrarily, just to be clear. You think because you believe what you believe. So my job as the spiritual director here is to get all of us, myself included, to work very hard to start knowing who is behind my mind, who is behind the thinker. You think what you think because you believe what you believe, and then you feel what you feel, and then at times you allow your emotions out. But behind all of that, from belief to thinker to feeling to emotion, behind all of that is that which is doing the thinking, that which is doing the believing, your consciousness. And your consciousness, as Rumi says, is everywhere, everything. So it's not just you individually, it's the entire universe is there to come through you individually to make the choices you make in life. And the belief I'm talking about today is knowing that you are this thing that we call God. And so going back to that person that asked me that question, the being underneath the thinker. When the person asked me that question, my answer was, I said, well, I see God because I see God in the trees, in the ocean, everywhere I go. That's where God is. My relationship now is with everything, not something outside of myself. Now, even as I was saying it, I felt inadequate saying it. I thought the words just didn't add up to what I felt, to what I believed, which is why I love that when Margaret did, I need a little meditation. Because what I really mean is this: how is my relationship with God? When I get quiet enough to tap into this field of pure energy, all I feel is love. When I get quiet enough and create the spiritual time in my life to spend time with myself and this entire field of energy, my relationship with God as God is renewed. That's our job. And from there, from that place, as he says, to know yourself as the being underneath the thinker, all of that is freedom, salvation, enlightenment. From that place, and this is what we've been working on, get there. Now know your truth. Now speak your word. Speak your word from that place of truth, and everything changes. Now I'm living in such a high level of consciousness. Everything that I speak unfolds, manifests. Now I'm equal to the life I want to live. It's coming back out of it. It's coming back out of the meditation where the problems arise. Because now you're back on the 405 behind a steering wheel, and you are using fingers you never want to use again. Not me, other people. To me, apparently. So the title of my talk today is, Who Do You Think You Are? And I want you to take a look at that reverse slide. Because usually the slides are like of a little cat looking at a mirror and there's a big lion there. This is a king or a queen. King. King, queen. What's the difference? This is one of the top two pieces. Seeing itself as a pawn. There's a name for that. Anybody know it? It's called the imposter syndrome. How many of you have felt, very good answer, by the way. Who said that? Gabriella? Oh, Lisa? Yes. Yeah, you channeled it through Lisa. It came out of her mouth. There's only one mind. So how many of you, and raise your hand, how many of you feel that you've ever succumbed to the imposter syndrome in your life? Yeah, I think a lot of us. You know, I don't like to talk about my Broadway career. 40 minutes in? Good. But I can honestly tell you, most of my Broadway career was lived in the midst of an imposter syndrome. Truly. Now, I believed I deserved to be there, but I remember when they did cast me as Riff in West Side Story, it didn't occur to me at the time. I know. It didn't occur to me at the time, but I spent that whole year scared to death someone was going to find out I was a sissy, not the leader of the Jets. And that they'd find out before we even opened and I'd be fired, which came close a number of times because I didn't really have what it took to play that kind of a role. So I've lived that imposter syndrome very many times in my life without even knowing it. I don't think you know you're living in the imposter syndrome. So I think that's what that chess piece is doing. The chess piece is like, I'm the king. I'm really a pawn, but I'm a king. So what's it going to take to move that piece of glass, to bring that pawn into the king and say, no, this is who you are all along. And you can even be the pawn in the game, that's fine. But you're the pawn who is a king. And even if you're knocked out of the game because the pawns are taken out very early, chess I do know, the musical, the pawn is taken out early, the pawn just waits for the next game. They line him back up again, don't they? Do you ever play chess and when the pawn's taken out, you throw it away and never use it again? You've got a problem if you do. No. So, the title, Who Do You Think You Are, is actually an important title because it's important for us to ask ourselves, who do I think I am? Who do I believe myself to be? And if I think I am less than who I know myself to be, why? What is going on that is causing me to think less of myself, to think littler about myself? Well, here's a couple people who brought this up. Maya Angelou. She said this, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Maya Angelou, who feels that the imposter syndrome has been part of her life. I don't know if Maya Angelou can think that. I think anyone can think that. Next up on my list of imposter syndromes, Tina Fey. She said, the beauty of the imposter syndrome is you vacillate between extreme egomania and a complete feeling of, I'm a fraud. Oh God, they're on to me, I'm a fraud. Just try to ride the egomania when it comes and enjoy it, and then slide through the idea of fraud. And you know, even though that's funny, I have to say, I like it. I like that idea of riding on the coattails, and I won't say egomania, but of the ego when it is healthy. Entertaining God only. Ego. Ego. Entertaining God only. If we can do that and only know ourselves as that, that's not egomaniacal. That is understanding who I am. And I love what she says here. Try to ride the, I'll say ego, when it comes. Ride that feeling of knowing who you are. When you know who you are, make choices, do things, get in there, activate it. That's our theme for the upcoming year. Action. Ego magical. Oh, I love that. I want next year to be all about taking everything we have done in my ministry is almost 20 years. Everything I have done in these 20 years and activate it. No more just mental understanding of it, but to embody it, to live it, to take chances, take risks, rise yourself in consciousness to that place of knowing who you are, and then moving from there and stopping the dropping back down to the yeah buts and all the reasons why you shouldn't, and the history of the world and all your relatives and all of your personal traits that have stopped you from becoming the person you know yourself to be. Or you're just going to be Stanley Kowalski out in the rain saying, Stella! That was good. I should have played that role. If someone had ever cast me in that, I'd have probably fainted from the imposter syndrome. So how do we, as she says, how do we slide through? How do we slide through when we're feeling this less than? How do we slide through? Well, the title of my talk was, Who Do You Think You Are? But I also want to ask you this. Who do you feel you are? Thinking's one thing, feeling's another. Thinking's up here, feeling's down here. The coherence between the two, meditation brings you to. So in a meditative state, generally your mind and your heart are coming together as one. So when you're there, who do you feel? What do you feel? I know every single person in this room has had a moment when they have felt like they were at the top of every game they'd ever played. Yes? We've all had those moments when we're there and it's like, oh my God, I can do anything. I can be anyone. That's why feeling is so important. Who do I think I am? Well, that's one thing. Who do I feel I am? That's another thing. And if I can only get the way I think and the way I feel to marry one another and come together in a full, complete understanding that what I feel and what I think are the same thing, then I find myself at the third component here. Who do I know I am? Think, feel, know. So if you start with I am God in the thinking in the elemental stages of cognitive thought, and if you allow it to drop into your heart and bring that contemplation, as she said, I need a little contemplation, into your heart, and your thinking and your feelings start to come together and you feel what that feels like, I guarantee you the more you do it, it will turn itself into a knowing that will be so profound that you will never again forget who you are. So Donia sent me this slide, this quote from David Geffen. David Geffen, a major icon in our industry who has done a lot of good for a lot of people. And I used to know David when I was in my 20s. And to watch who he was then, which was he was the head of Geffen Records at the time, which is why I knew him. And you look 40 years later, that's pretty amazing what this man has accomplished. And he says this, I've always thought that each person invented himself for whatever reasons, through whatever circumstance, through whatever he has gone through, that we are each a figment of our own imagination. And some people have a greater ability to imagine than others. Well, I'd like to believe that some people use their imagination more than others, but that we all have the ability to use our imaginations in profound ways. So I'm going to ask you today to give your imagination a chance, to spend some time in your mind imagining who you could possibly be. And I do want to ask you, can you imagine yourself as someone who is comfortable in the skin of God? Are you someone that could really imagine what your life would be like if you were to take who you are and live from it? If you were to find the time to obliterate all of your yeah buts. How many people have yeah buts? Do you ever hear yourself say, well, yeah, but? Yeah, I get caught now. I'm like, well, yeah, but and. Just to change the but to an and. It's still the same thing. You also have yeah ands. To take all of our stuff about ourselves, everything we say to ourselves that is not loving, that somehow points to something in the past that is in the past, that somehow doesn't really get it, that this infinite field of pure creativity is funneling itself through you, just saying, Pat, use me. Suzanne, use me. This is who you are, Jeannie. So let it out. Let it all out. Don't parcel it out. Don't piecemeal it out. Don't take it out when you think you need it because your life's going downhill. That's the old method. That's praying to God because I have a problem. Which I always love the quote. Stop praying to God to make your problem smaller. Make your God bigger. Make yourself bigger than what's in front of you. Imagination. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us to drop down into our hearts, to know what we know, bring it into what we feel, to feel what we feel, and move it into what we know. And then take that knowing, live from it in such a profound way that we can use our imaginations to create any experience we want to create. And it doesn't matter which side of that piece of glass you are on. If you right now feel like a pawn, be a pawn with a queen's voice. And if you think you're a queen or a king, then stay there. Because remember, that's who you are. You are the number one piece in any design because you are that which is behind all of it. You're not just this thing out here doing it. You're all of it, moving through this individualized thing called you. So I invite you this month as we go through knowing, to know more of that, to know more of you. You always have been, you are now, and you always will be. No time like the present to start to remember who you are. Namaste. Thank you.